Have you heard the news that men are from Mars and women are from Venus?
Can you guess which one you belong to?
You probably guess easily because of the socially constructed stereotypes about gender that you have unknowingly or knowingly internalized.
From society's point of view, men and women are fundamentally different species. The assumption is that, on average, men and women have little to no similarities, as seen by the non-overlapping curves. The question is, are the average gender differences in personality traits predetermined by biology, exclusively shaped by social factors, or is it a combination of the two? Of course, there is no right or wrong answer, and there is evidence for each argument in the literature. Through this video, we seek to start a conversation on the impact of socialization and reported gender differences in personality.
Personality trait theorists argue that traits constitute the core of human personality, and that these traits are stable across the lifespan. Though human personality traits may be partly predetermined by biology, we argue that social factors such as power differences influence observed gender differences in men and women's personality traits. While we recognize that sex and gender is not binary, we refer to differences between men and women given the framework of existing literature. One of the major concepts of personality and identity in intro psych is the Big Five. To recap, the Big Five comprises OCEAN, standing for openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, and each are associated with particular adjectives. Now, what Big Five gender differences have been studied? According to Costa et al. And Fangold, there are gender differences in Big Five scores across cultures. Men are higher in assertiveness, openness to ideas, and have higher self-esteem, while women are higher in agreeableness, neuroticism, and extroversion in report, being higher in warmth, trust, nurturing, anxiety, and have an openness to feelings. Are men and women born two different species, or are there social factors accentuating gender differences in personality?
One possible confounding factor affecting self-report measures, such as personality measures, is confirmation bias, which refers to the tendency to endorse information in accordance with one's preconceptions or provide socially desirable answers. For example, confirmation bias exists when women demonstrate personality traits that align with societal expectations of their gender. One study shows that personality measures differed when implicit and explicit measures were taken. Implicit measures, which are resistant to socially desirable answers, or confirmation bias, measured participants' automatic association to a self-concept corresponding to each Big Five factor. Findings showed weak or zero gender differences. Women scored only slightly higher in neuroticism and agreeableness, and men just slightly higher in openness and extroversion. Explicit measures, which are more susceptible to confirmation bias, measured participants' mindful associations. When explicit measures of personality were compared, women scored higher in neuroticism, agreeableness, and extroversion. As a result, when implicit questions were asked, men and women differed by 8% as compared to 25% when they were asked explicitly about personality traits. This may suggest that social expectations play a role in personality. If these differences are influenced by how we are asked questions, then what societal factors could make a person want to respond differently? Could status and power be factors?
We hypothesize that status has an impact on personality characteristics. A common presumption is that men have relatively higher status and prestige than women. People look to those in higher status to make decisions, viewing them as being more assertive and more competent. Because they can be seen as more assertive and competent, it is likely expected that those in a higher status are also more conscientious. This may be directly linked to gender assumptions, as men hold more resources and higher positions of power, particularly in the workforce. These expectations of men may be internalized by both men and women. In turn, because men are perceived to have more power, women may be more likely to internalize a submissive role and men a more dominant role. The assumption that men are of a higher status gives rise to the expectation that they have more power than women. Studies have suggested that gender differences are able to neutralize and rationalize power differences. When a role is associated with an ambiguous status, gender highly influences the behavior of the individual. Simply put, status and power influence men and women's behavior and the personality traits they demonstrate in interactions, thereby influencing their self-concepts and how they are perceived by others. Studies found that individuals in lower status occupations, compared to those in higher status occupations, report less assertiveness and dominance, and rate others as more extroverted, more emotionally stable, less agreeable, and less open to experience. And, consistent across different cultures and sexual orientations, masculinity is positively associated with extroversion and negatively to neuroticism, while femininity is positively associated with agreeableness.
As you have seen, there is evidence suggesting that personality is linked to how a person is socialized. Interestingly, some personality traits are directly related to a person's career choice. One study shows that a person's masculinity or femininity has a direct impact on the career they went into. For example, feminine individuals were likely to go into professions that require compassion and nurturing characteristics, whereas masculine people were more likely to go into jobs that require strength or aggression. Now, is this more a biological effect, or is it directly related to the expectations of the masculine and feminine traits? This is an example of how societal expectations can influence the way a person behaves and the impact it has on their life in general.
In conclusion, while biological influences cannot be ignored, socialization plays a role in one's personality. Thus, are men really from Mars? Are women really from Venus? Even though differences are observed between groups on average, there is great variability within gender. In reality, we are much more alike than we are different.